Hello, I'm Perry Farrell, and you're watching Toasted.
One of the songs on the new album is called Awesome, which you wrote after the birth of your son. And if I listen to the song, it's not a really Perry Farrell song. It is one, but it's not one you should expect from you.
Well, you know, it's one that I always had in my heart, but I just never got out until now. So, to me, I wanted to write, in part, I wrote that when I was looking at my son for the very first time in the hospital. But my son was in my wife's arms, and I was writing it for her as well. And then eventually, when I put the song into the story of the satellite party, it became the story of a man looking at the Earth from the vantage point of a satellite with a woman that he was in love with. And he was singing both about the woman and about the Earth that he saw.
That's the layer on the whole album is positiveness, of course, but also global awareness, global warming, etc., etc. The whole stuff about nature, etc. Like, come on, people, you got to be positive. That's the only way to change the world. To try to summarize it in a sentence, but that's something you really had in mind while writing the songs.
Yes, absolutely. I'm reading a book right now called The Tipping Point, and it is about social epidemics and how they occur. And I find it pretty fascinating that there's a certain moment, and it might be a fraction of a number, or it might be one person leaving a job that could create this effect, this domino effect of all of a sudden the world changing on a massive level. And I feel that the world is about to change on a massive level. We're at the tipping point, but of a very positive movement that I call the revolution solution, where there's going to be solutions offered to global warming and various other social diseases. And we as individuals are going to be the mass is going to be behind this movement, so we cannot be stopped or contained, but it's very important to stay positive.
Because I think I can go along with you, because you have the feeling over in Holland also there has been a little bit too much negative feelings, etc., etc., and then the amount of people that want to change it but are maybe by itself not able to change it. Well, the amount is enough. Then it will change.
You want to know the funny statistic? That this person was saying that there's a statistic that he calls the 80-20 principle. The 80-20 principle is 80% of things, 80% of the car accidents happen from 20% of the drivers. And so you only need a few key people to actuate it, and then once it starts to happen, everyone takes over from there. Yeah, 80% of the people will go with it. So we're at the point now where we need just a good solid 20% to say, yep, this is going to go, and that'll tip, and we're going to go.
Because the key word for you on this album is, for example, solution. It's something. I mean, we gotta get, well, just as you told us a few seconds ago. It's like, there gonna be some solution. But do you have in your mind, because you had a word with our English Prime Minister also about solutions, etc., etc. But you also have a plan to do the global warming, especially for the global warming, and a solution for it, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I work with an organization, Global Cool. They have ambitions and solutions to reduce carbon emissions by 1 billion tons within 5 years' time. We need really to reduce carbon emissions by 6 billion tons within 10 years. But if we could get the first billion and reduce that, and it would bite us time. We can go now 15, 20 years if we can get just 1 billion down. Interesting to note that the science and the technology are in place right now to do this and accomplish this. The one thing that is lagging behind is the culture. The culture needs to catch up. And the way you do this is you set a new fashion trend in consumerism. And so this is what I'm going to attempt to do. I'm going to attempt to create a fashion to move away from things like, as I say, from a consumer point of view, maybe we don't buy Kleenex tissue that uses bleach, cuts down forest, and doesn't reforest. And maybe we go to 7th generation tissue that doesn't use bleach, recycles their paper, and reforests. So one thing like that could be that fraction that I'm talking about, where Kleenex goes, oh my God, we better start to behave like 7th generation. And that's all it would take. That could be the tipping point we need. So we're going to set up things like that. We're going to put together events on a consistent basis. We're going to be traveling around the world. It's not going to be a one-show flash-up day, which I don't know how much that's going to help. It might help to bring attention, but the consistency of doing these events and speaking about this. And we also plan on rebuilding industry as we go. It's a little bit more in depth, this subject, but wherever we go, we're going to look to put in solar power and wind power and hydrogen, whatever suits the city.
But it's also like, it's as far as the money part is concerned, it's also a political movement you need, because you gotta need to make the better production cheaper than the old school dirty stuff.
Very, very true. What we're looking for is we're looking to also affect and fashion politicians, because politicians have to say, this is what the will of the people is. We want, obviously, to do what's right for the people. We want to get elected. And so we'll create subsidies for people who are looking to change their industry to make it more environmentally sound, and penalize those that are not doing so and polluting.
You need some kind of a change. For example, in America, you got to change from the Republican oil companies, etc., and the Bush part to, I think the other part is better. I mean, if it's Clinton or whoever it's going to be, I mean, that should be better than the Republican part, don't you think?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. This is a bold statement. I have no real faith in politicians today, and I'll tell you why. Politicians used to be hired by the people and were supposed to carry out the will of the people, and that was when democracy was in its infancy. Democracy has been ruined by privatized interest, and so what you find is that really who's running things is corporations. And politicians are brought into, they are elected with the support of these private groups. So we don't know if we can necessarily trust them. But this doesn't dissuade me from my plans. This inspires me, because what I see is the solution to this is we go to the people, and I say that capitalism will in the end save the world. Because if that person is not going to buy a combustion engine car that uses petroleum, but will buy the hydrogen car, there's nothing that the Republicans or the CIA or
who else
can do to stop it.
It's something you don't need power for. Just the power of the amount of people is the power.
The power of the consumer. It's a matter of time, but we've got to get the word out, be organized, be loving, because love will conquer, and be clever and be playful.
Yeah, because I think one of the dangerous part of it is if you gotta find a mixture of love, of the message, but also the music. Because if you don't put enough music into it, people will think, oh, yeah, he's the guy that just be loving and just got his message, whatever. But we don't listen to the music. But this album is a perfect mixture of which you really thought ahead, didn't you? Because you really thought in the beginning when you were writing, you thought, okay, I got to put into love, positiveness, but also a message, but also the music is important, because this is an album.
Yes, I agree with you. That is, the admixture is 90% fun and play and 10% charity. And that is my chemistry. That is my alchemy for life, really, in general. So I know in my mind that if the music is not going to lift a person's spirit and make them giddy and make them dance and horny, everything else that I have to say is a bore.
Well, I think you got a point, but let's talk about your music on the album, because it's like it's pretty difficult to describe the album, because you took a lot of people into it to play some instruments, but also I think co-write songs with you. You also had like a Thievery Corporation song, which I also heard already on the album of the guys. But let's talk about that one, because that's also a really and I'm not going to say a funny song, but it's a really different song.
I call the sound sedimentary rock because it was made in sediments of sound. Began with programming electronic beats and synthesizers, because originally my concept was just to have a party, a weekend party, more like a house party with dance music, and I wanted to program the music in myself as well as play other people's records. And so it came all through synthesizers and loops, but then and very little words. But as the songs developed, my wife said to me, "Perry, you know, you should sing. You should sing more on the record, and you should think to perform, because being behind the turntables for you is, you have, you know, you're one of the greater performers around." And she said, you owe it to yourself to get real musicians and start to layer this thing and bring in other people and create a band. And I thought about it because I love house music so much. I thought, well, you know what? I don't have to lose the house music sound. I can just start to layer it with the live players. Then I eventually ended up to layer it with, you know, female voice, who created a very unisexual sound, and a 30-piece orchestra on top of that. It was what I consider to be a hybrid of sound in a sedimentary rock.
Yeah, because you get the groove of that house music you really like. You had this dancing groove, but you got a whole bunch of different songs on it, on top of it. But this is like the layers of music, etc.
Yes, and the reason that this works so well for me, why I'm so happy to present the music in this regard and in this light, in this way, is because I noticed that out in the clubs, people were not listening to rock anymore. And I, as a DJ, I played mostly house music at 125 BPM, 130 BPM. The other DJs that were not house music DJs were basically playing hip hop all the time. And it hurt my feelings because I felt like, why aren't people playing rock? And the answer was that rock music does not produce for clubs. The modern club systems, sound systems, are not friends with the rock music productions. So I went and I produced it using those subsonic sounds, house music sounds, with the BPMs of either hip-hop or house, so that if you were at a house party, you could hear some of these songs. If you're in playing party music in a club, you could play Jay-Z and then play Satellite Party.